Okay, now that my camera has stopped cutting out on me, I can finally record this video. Anyway. Hello everyone, and today I am back to talk about some more books. So I am going to do what was kind of a trend like a while ago, and I've been wanting to do it, so I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna be looking at all the Goodreads 1-star reviews or low reviews of some of my favorite books, just because why not? And it's kind of fun to see people's different opinions of some of the books that you've really enjoyed, and everybody is allowed to have different opinions. Everybody's allowed to like or dislike whatever they want. Well, sometimes it's fun to have a look at how people can severely hate something so strongly, because let's face it, Goodreads has some terrible negative reviews on there, and I think if you're going to review a book, do it constructively. So give that author some constructive criticism, not just blatantly say, holy crap, this was a shit book. Like, sometimes you get a little bit passionate about your dislike of a book and you don't think about how that may hurt the author's feelings. But anyway, this is going to be a fun video, and I'm in no way mocking anybody else's opinions or their reviews. I just wanted to do this for fun, just to see what people think of the books that I've really loved and enjoyed. Alright, so number one is going to be The Book Thief. So I'm going through and having a look at the reviews on Goodreads. Here we go. This is a great one. Everyone in the whole world seems to adore this book, and yet I hate it
so much.
The so much is in caps lock, just so you know. The writing style is just so grating. It took me forever to figure out why, but I think in large part it's because it's 100% telling without showing. I can understand that, but like, in my point of view, I actually prefer to read stuff that's, well, I like a mix, I guess, sometimes. Like, I don't like too much description because I'll just ignore it. Like, I like to make up my own images. Give me a basic idea of the scene, and, if people are dressed a certain way, sure, and if something about their hair or whatever is meaningful to the story, then tell me that. But all in all, I just don't care sometimes. Like, I hate over description unless it's relevant to the story. What else do we have? Here we go. I hated it. I hated it so much that I don't even want to rant. I forced myself to read this all day and didn't enjoy it for a second. Maybe I'm cold and dead inside, because when the inevitable sad parts came, all I felt was relief that I would soon be put out of my misery and this obnoxiously written book would finally be at an end. Did I cry? Did I feel moved? Hell to the no. Okay. Moving on. Here's a short one. I know the great reviews this book has received, but I couldn't get past the nonsensical language of death. What some saw as poetic, I found annoying. If not for that, I would have enjoyed this book more. Okay, so with The Book Thief, it's narrated by Death, if you don't already know that. And that's one of the main things I absolutely love about this story. Cats. What are you going to do? I can understand why some people don't like this book, because the writing style is very unique. The narration is very unique. Like, what kind of book have you come across where it's Death telling you a story? It's why I love it, because it's so different from anything that I've read. Okay, we'll do one more. Wow, okay. I couldn't get into this one. I made it to page 30 and knew I should quit. I immediately disliked the concept for the narrator, the little fragments of information that read like bullet points, and the attempted use of colours and weather as devices came off nonsensical and insincere. There's a lot about the way it's written that I dislike, but I see no point in complaining. I wanted to write a little note on why I rated it 1 star and to explain I didn't make it far into the book. As it's typically enjoyed, I would suggest trying it for yourself if you have any interest. I wasn't interested even when I didn't know how it was written, but gave it a chance when there was an offer to borrow it. While it was worse than I expected, I don't consider my enjoyment or lack thereof anything but personal taste. I didn't get far enough to meaningfully criticize the story. That's a good review. That's a very well written, set out review for that one. Moving on to the next book, we have the Fallen Kingdom series. So I'm just going to go with the first book, which is essentially Fallen Kingdoms. Wow, so many people have DNF'd this book. Alright. Oh, here we go. This sounds like a nice little rant. When, publishers, do you mean to cease abusing our patience? Do you imagine that we have never met people who act with logic, or do you willfully flood the market with paltry imitations of human behaviour so that we shall no longer be able to recognise shadow from form? Interesting. This novel has a score of characters who, time and time again when given information, refuse to interpret what they have heard. It is impossible to believe that an impoverished kingdom paying a 75% tax on wine exports does not recognise that their tax rate is partially to blame for their poverty. The income tax in Sweden may be close to 60% today, but the Swedish government uses its income to provide its taxpayers with social services. Okay, we're using some statistics here. This is actually a very well thought out review. I am intrigued, but I can see where people are coming from. I like the statistics, though. The use of the statistics was pretty good. Okay, here we go. Next one. This is the blandest fantasy I've read in a long time. The author sets it up nicely to be a big fantasy saga, but its execution is generic and boring. Fair enough. The plot was predictable, the characters were caricatures, the pacing was slow in the beginning and ridiculous by the end. There's practically no world building, a lot of telling and not showing. I had vague interest that turned into skimming for most of the last chunk. I've read a lot of high fantasy, and this is one that just doesn't stand out to me when compared to the best I've read in this genre. It's the drywall of YA fantasy.
It's the drywall of YA fantasy.
It's the drywall of YA fantasy.
Oh, that's fantastic. I still love this book, but I can understand where people are coming from. I've turned a light on, so it may look a little bit better than it did before. But that was so good. I liked that review. That was hilarious. Alright, here's the last one for Fallen Kingdoms. This book is a doozy. It's the most non-stop angsty book I have ever read. Constant crying, whining, tantrums, yelling. We have 4 main characters. All of them freak out most of the time. I'm not sure whether the author actually believes teenagers are this juvenile or what. They act like they're all 4-year-olds. You know what? I actually love that about this book, because a lot of the time when you're reading like YA books, the teenagers seem to act all-knowing. Like, oh my god, this is the be-all, end-all of my life. I'm 16 years old and I desperately need to be with this person I've known for 5 minutes. Like, they act kind of a mix of immature and mature. Like, they think they know everything. They think they're an adult, but they are not. And I feel like when you're reading about teenagers doing all these big things, it doesn't seem realistic, whereas you look at a lot of teenagers nowadays and they're definitely not grown up. Like, you're always learning, if that makes sense. So I think it was really good to have a YA fantasy where the characters grow, which is what they do. They grow through each book and they have a lot of character development. So obviously they all start out so immature and so childish, which is what I absolutely love about the series. I think she wrote those teenagers very, very well. Next, we have Remember Me by Leslie Pierce. I also realized that I didn't even put the authors' names in the other 2 books, but oh well, we'll just continue on. I'm just too excited to read all these negative reviews. So yes, we have Remember Me by Leslie Pierce. Now, I've actually mentioned this in one of my other videos before. This is a book that I read ages ago when I was still in school, and it's a historical fiction about the convict Mary Bryant, who was a convict sent on the First Fleet and ended up finding her way back home. It's a beautiful story. It really is. If you like historical fiction, definitely have a look at that one. I don't know, like, I feel like a lot of these kind of books may not get as much harsh negativity like the young adult books will, but we will see. We will see. Here's this one. A story based rather loosely, I am guessing, on fact, which is an easy read if you can ignore the repetition and irritating style. An interesting subject, but one that I would have preferred to read a non-fiction account of. Yeah, I can understand that. It is very fictional, obviously. Like, it's definitely loosely based on a character, but it's pretty enjoyable. Okay, so there's a lot of 1-star reviews, but everyone's just given it the star without actually saying anything. So what's this one? I decided to put it aside because there was just so many times you can read that the character was cleaner, more intelligent, and so much better than anybody else. It was so repetitive that the action suffered a bit and it couldn't keep me interested. It had potential. I did enjoy to read about the colonisation of Australia. I think I've never read fiction that dealt on that subject, but it gets so little attention that it was a bit frustrating. Yeah, I can understand. I mean, I haven't read this book in like years, so maybe when I reread it, I'll think of it differently. But from the very first read, I thought it was very well done. Like Leslie Pierce, from the books that I have read and what I know about her other books, is that she does a lot of research, and she, even if her books are loosely based on different things, she does a lot of research, and there is a lot of history in her books. So I think she does very well with what she knows. The next one is Eleanor Park by Rainbow Rowell. I read this 2015, I think, and boy did it make me sob. It was heartbreakingly beautiful. I loved it, and I still love it. And I know there's a lot of people out there who hate it. Okay, let's see what people have to say about this one, which I can imagine is quite a lot. Oh, here we go. The first one just caught my eye. Should I break out in song and dance to Bar Bar Black Sheep, One Lonely Star? I'm just as surprised as you are, considering I just knew going into Eleanor Park that I would love it. Love it. Love it. What reason would I have to believe otherwise? Almost all of my friends love this book and have sworn fealty to the goddess of feels and might, Rainbow Rowell. And I get it, because she is a pretty awesome person, and I think she's totally lovely. So trust me when I say I really wanted to love this book. In fact, I am blindsided that I didn't, saddened that I can't join the Eleanor Park Cool Kids fan club, and disappointed at such a disjointed reading experience. Random reasons why I didn't like this book. So we have the romance. She just didn't get the romance. The historical background. Okay, so there's, yeah, okay. And the narration, the story, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah. She goes into detail with this review, which is nice to see. And I can understand why some people have an issue with this book as well. Like I said, not everybody is going to like the same book. But it's interesting to see what like other people's takes are on these books. Here's one. I read this years ago and loved it, but I need to change my rating because I would hate this if I read it now. That's interesting, because people's reading tastes change. Here we go. Lesson of the day, you guys. It is not diversity to put one Asian person as a main character. And if you're going to put a person of color, in this case a Korean American character, as the main character, write them well, do your research, and actually talk to some fucking Asian people instead of making shit up. Whoa, this is an intense review. Like, there is a lot of swearing and just intense ranting. This book is gross and racist as fuck. It is so blatantly and unbelievably racist in its narrative, the characters, and story that I find it hard to believe that anyone could even remotely give this more than 2 stars, unless you're some ignorant white fool who reinforces racial stereotypes and fetishizes Asians. Okay, interesting. Okay, I can see that. But like, my problem with a lot of diversity is that people just throw it in there. And I think that's where she's coming from. Like, people say that something is diverse when in actual fact, like, it's just, hey, let's just chuck this random person in here and call it diversity. That's my problem with A Curse So Dark and Lonely, which I should probably talk about later. But with that particular book, I was so annoyed because the main character has cerebral palsy, but at the first half of the book, maybe like the first quarter, it was all like, yep, she has cerebral palsy. She has cerebral palsy. She is disabled. She is a diverse character because she's disabled. But then like the rest of the book, it was just ignored. Like, it wasn't brought up again. It was like, let's just throw this all in at the beginning of the book and forget about it towards the end. It was like she didn't even have it. So that bugged me, because to me, I saw that as, hey, this is just diverse because of this one particular thing. But whatever. Okay, anyway. One more for Eleanor Park. This novel can be summed in a word. Problematic.
Problematic.
I don't even know from where I could start my review, so I won't. Instead, read this and you may even reconsider your high ratings, having another POV on this story. It explains perfectly what I'd want to say in this review. I think it's an article or something that they've shared. Oh yeah, it's on Tumblr, so I think it was an article or something, but this was like beginning of last year, but it's not available anymore. Still really cool though. Quick read. I don't get Raoul's characters or her strange romances. I was never this awkward or knew of any friends this awkward. Weird overall. See, that's what I love about Eleanor Park, because they're weird and they're awkward, like, and I can relate to that because I was weird and I was awkward. I still am. And that's what I love about it, that I could connect to these characters, and I can understand why some people can't connect to these characters, but it's why I loved it, because I could. Alright, what do we have next? We have The Last Namsara, which I cried in, and it was beautiful, and I loved it. It's a great book. I loved it. You know, dragons and romance, and it was just beautiful. And I have pins and needles in my foot. I wish I could go back in time and DNF this thing. Fair enough. So many people have put this as DNF'd. Oh, here we go. Yay, I'm done with this book and I can pretend I never suffered through it. I originally was classifying this as Fantasy 101, but even Fantasy 101 has better character structuring than this does, and better plot, and better not making my eyes roll back in my head. The tiny pieces of dragon stories and lore sprinkled throughout were the absolute highlights of this book. I think the author had a lot of good blurby stories without the ability to flesh them out, so they all got slapped in here, surrounded by a sludgy plot with literally no substance. Like melted jello that still has bits of fruit in it. So glad to be done and moving on to something better.
Like melted jello that still has bits of fruit in it. Like melted jello that still has bits of fruit in it.
That's a great comparison. It's so good. I love seeing people get so shitty at some of these books. It's fantastic. This book was slow, predictable, and boring. I am ashamed that this book is Canadian. I just can't. This book is so boring. A disappointingly average read. As I understand it, the following books are from the perspective of side characters. I didn't really find these characters interesting in the slightest, so I'm not gonna bother. Alright. I liked this, I just couldn't continue when the plot was so predictable. But they liked it. That's confusing. The next one is To Kill a Kingdom. I like that I'm not even saying the author's names, I just gave up. I really enjoyed To Kill a Kingdom though. It was so well done. Such a good book. Okay, here we go for To Kill a Kingdom. Okay, I'm disappointed. This had so much potential and could have been such a great story. I ended up skimming this, which I never do. I'm stubborn and hate to have unfinished books lying around. But in all honesty, I was forcing myself to read a few pages at a time just to get it over with, and life is too short for books that bore me. I agree with that. And this bored me to tears. Well, I wasn't bored. I was entertained pretty much the entire time. But, you know, I can understand it's not for everybody. It's a different kind of story. Oh, okay. There's some swearing in this one. Fuck this. This is the biggest disappointment of my year. I passed up on buying Patrick Ness's Chaos Walking series for this, only to have it spit on my face. I've never been this mad and disappointed on a book before. Even Wintersong did not drive me this mad. That 1 star up there, only thanks to the world building and the cover. Having a beautiful cover but a disappointingly mediocre content should be a sin. Oh boy. Okay, this was the worst thing I've ever read, and that's saying something. I honestly can't believe I stuck around until the end, but I guess I hoped it would get better. Newsflash, it didn't. Oh my god. Do you hear that? That chugga chugga choo choo as the ground rumbles and a distant whistle sounds in the distance? Yeah, that would be the hype train. Ah, yes, because this is such a hyped book. I find that a lot with a lot of books that are hyped. It's either love it or hate it. I've yet again failed disastrously with a super hyped book, and honestly, I shouldn't even be surprised by myself anymore. Yet, I am. See, this is the kind of review that I like. Well, part of the review, because they talk about what was good and what wasn't good. Even if they gave them like 1 star, they still said, I thought the writing was very professionally done. I also loved the retelling aspects. I thought they were clever and unique, which is great. Like, it's nice to have some positivity in there without demeaning the author. It was also just really boring. At first I was super captivated by the storyline and concept, but then it just died out, which is fair enough. Like, I've read books where I get bored in them, and yeah, it is interesting to see people actually write a decent, constructive review. And there's nothing wrong with sharing your opinion. Just don't make the author feel like shit. Here's a good one. I need justice. To Kill a Kingdom, people. Can I just say the author makes a siren speak Greek and she doesn't even use the correct grammar. I don't speak Greek, so I didn't know. But hey, if that's true, whatever. I don't care. I still loved the book anyway. Oh dear. Well, that was interesting. I'd like to do that later on down the track with books that I didn't like and see the negative reviews for that as well, or even like the positive ones and do sort of the opposite, but we'll see how I go. I hope you guys enjoyed this. It was actually a lot of fun for me to do. It was interesting to see other points of view on books that I really, really enjoyed. So, yes, I guess I will talk to you guys next time.